All right, welcome everyone to another in our expert webinar series for OpenAir users. Today's topic is creative uses for OpenAir issues, something that you may have come up with something creative yourself that we'd love to hear about it. It's definitely an area of the system that can be built out more and used because there is some workflow capability to it. But first, before we get into that whole set of items, let me see if I can get my page to turn. There we go. Just to give you a heads up on what's going on in the OpenAir community and where Top Step will be showing up. We are doing OpenAir user groups this month, actually next week in Chicago on Thursday, July 17th. First time ever it's been sold out. We have about 24 people coming. And then Minneapolis, which will be the very first time we're doing it in Minneapolis on Friday, July 18th. And then we have our second one of the year in Boston, scheduled for the middle of August. Our friends at Collaborative Consulting will be supporting us in hosting that for our location there. And next month, if you're interested, we are doing reporting tips and tricks. As many of you may know from the May release, there are a number of enhancements that came into the whole management of reports, so we'll be incorporating that into our August 14th webinar series. And something I just want to highlight, those of you who follow us, we're at SuiteWorld and sponsor at SuiteWorld. Well, this year for the first time we actually are going to sponsor the Technology Services World Conference in Las Vegas on October 20th to the 22nd. Many of your favorite PSA brand vendors are going to be there, Financial Force, NetSuite, and so we will be there as well, and hopefully we'll see some of you at that event. So let's go ahead and get started. So what we're going to be covering today is basically just to go over what the issues feature is all about. I think it's an area of the system that there's a lot of functionality sort of attached to it, but you don't realize it until you sort of peel the onion back. So we're going to go through that today, so show you some of the highlights of the feature and what you can do with the feature. And then we're just going to go through a series of sample configurations that we've worked with customers on, or customers have implemented on their own and told us about, just as a great information sharing and get the creative juices flowing, so to speak. So if you think about using the issues feature, how you could best take advantage of it. So what is the issues feature? It's a feature in the system that it's given the title issue because it's really meant to track issues. What is the issue? Who's working on it? What's the severity? What date does it need to be resolved by? What date do you expect it to be resolved by? Just your basic, sort of issue log tracking thing that you may have done in spreadsheets before. You may have something like a Bugzilla or a Jira system that you're using that. So OpenAir basically has an answer to that. It's called Issues. The one thing the issue feature does not do is integrate with email. So it tends to be more of a form completion activity, which does make it a viable option for other uses in the system other than issue tracking. So in order for you to actually even see the issue feature, you have to enable it. And you have to enable it in not one but two places actually. The first place you enable it is in the projects module. So in the controls, the administration controls, in the project settings area, in the other settings, that whole list of ad hoc switches that you can turn on for the projects module, there is something called Enable Project Issues, and the screenshot here shows you that. And next to it is the issue prefix, which defaults to IS-, and you can override that, but you have to have at least some type of prefix for it to work. You can't just blank this out, unfortunately. So once you have the feature enabled, then you have to basically tell the system which project stages support the view of issues. And those projects that are in those stages will have the ability to have issues associated to them, and then issues will also be a tab that will show up in the project module. Okay? So if you're not familiar with the whole project stage configuration, let me take you into the system really quick and I'll kind of iterate where all the control is. In the administration module, the first and foremost thing to activate issues is under the, my system's running a bit slow today with the Ready Talk. is under the Application Settings, Project Settings area. And then from the full list of project settings that you have, it's actually at the very bottom, Other Settings. And you can scroll down the form, but I like to do a Control F and just look for the word Issue. Oh, I'd renamed it, sorry, Activity. Enable Project, and this would be Issues, but I use terminology overrides, and we'll talk about that in a second. Enable Project Issues, and then the issue prefix here. Okay. And once it's enabled, now you have to go and turn it on in certain project stages. So at least one project stage has to have it enabled. And you also do that back on the project settings. So let me just go back to the top here. Click Projects. Go to my project stages. And I'm going to just turn it on in the live stage. So in the live stage here, I have something called Activity Assignments, which is actually a rename of the Issues feature. So it would normally say Issues here. And I'll show you where that terminology override is in the system. So you turn it on in at least one stage and the feature will be available. And where it's available is actually, it lives inside a project, so you can actually create these issue items inside a project. So I'm going to open a project up, and you'll see that there's a link here, and whatever you've named the word Issues in the system, it will show up as a link value here. Currently I have this turned on as Activity Assignments. And not only does it show up inside the project, and this is where you can create activity assignments or issues, you can create transactions here. It also shows up as a tab, so you can look across projects, across all the projects that have these items or these issues associated to it. And just knowing that, just knowing how you can look at the data across projects or within a project may already be giving you guys ideas about what you could use it for. And when we get into the examples, you'll see what drove the decision to use the issues feature for those. So an issue itself actually has a life cycle, so it's either open or closed. So when you have the feature turned on in the system, you will have a basic set of open and resolved issue stages, you can call them. And you can rename these as well. You don't have to call them stages. You can call them statuses or progresses or whatever you want for tracking purposes. But the issue stages themselves are something that you can designate as one stage could be the default for any new issue that's created. That's the default, something like an open or a created or a new status. And then one should be designated as a closed. It represents the fact that it's completed, it's done. And that could be resolved or closed or completed or OBE, whatever you want. So at least one of them has to have this control for closed. And the reason for that is there's actually logic in the system that associates to moving an issue into this quote-unquote closed stage can trigger notifications based on that action. Okay. So where are the issue stages controlled? The issue stages are actually controlled again under that application settings area on the projects. So issues themselves, once you turn them on, then there's I think four different fields that now you have control over populating. Things like, and I think it's on the next screen here, things like the category of the issue, the severity of the issue, the source of the issue, the status of the issue. Those are all configuration items that you can control in the system by populating what the value list is going to be for these. So if you think in terms of an issue, if you think in terms of an issue log, there's usually a description, there's usually an owner, there's usually a date, there's usually a date that you need to fix it by, or a due date. Then there's usually a category saying this is related to integrations or data migration or functionality. And then there's usually who reported it. It could be the test team, it could be the customer, it could be the developers. And it could be a severity as far as is this high, medium, low, or 1 through 5. And then it could be a status of, is this high risk, low risk, is it red, amber, green type thing, open, closed. Anything that sort of makes sense if you had a spreadsheet that was tracking issues, those are the kind of things that you would pretty much used to describe the issues so you could quickly identify the ones that are the heavy hitters that you have to be aware of right away, and the ones that are sort of lower priority but you still need to track them. All of that's available in the issue feature. And to configure some of these fields, you basically configure the value list as you need to track it. So going back into that administration area under project settings, I should have just kept it there. You will have things like issue stage, issue status, issue severity, or you could have them renamed using the terminology overrides in OpenAir. And we renamed them things like priorities, progresses, categories, sources, statuses. So these are all values that when you want to build out your issue feature, you identify what's this drop down going to look like, and you add the values, and you can turn pieces on and off as you want to. So you populate a lot of the data lists that show up in the issue form itself. Now the terminology override, I've mentioned it a couple times already. The issue feature itself, the term issue can be overridden, as you've already seen in my sandbox that I'm showing you. I used the terminology override, and I renamed issue to be activity assignment. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down here to the issue area. And I used a custom term called activity assignment. And my issue category, I renamed category. Issue severity, I renamed priority. Issue source, I just called it source to shorten it. Issue stage, I used as progress. Issue status, I just shortened it to status. These are all standard values that come in that you basically can populate what the value list is for the fields, and they're fields that show up on the issue form standard. Okay? And with the terminology override, you can rename it to whatever you want. So having said that, so now I not only have a static set of, I've got a list of values I can use, fields I can use, where I can populate lists of values. I can turn those values on and off. I can rename those values to be whatever I want. And I can turn the feature on in certain project stages, and I can see it across projects. Maybe now you're starting to think, oh, well, I wonder if I could do, I wonder what else I could do with this, right? The feature also has the ability to link to tasks on your project, have user assignments, so you can assign this item, this issue to a user. You can use a generic user for the assignment, similar like you would for a task assignment. And it has a number of standard date fields like required, expected, or resolved type things. So these are all standard values that are on the issue form that you can choose to use or choose not to use by leveraging things like form permission. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. Make sure I didn't miss one. Okay. Now, we have a form. It has fields that we can configure. We can rename things on it. We can make the form sort of have, just like any other form in OpenAir, you can add custom fields to it. You can use the standard fields that come with it and sort of populate the list the way that you want and turn things on and off within those lists. But another thing that is unique about the issue feature is that you can include it as part of your project setup. That project copy from another project feature, where you can copy over things like billing rules and recognition rules and budgets and dashboard settings. You can also duplicate the issues. And if you're duplicating it from a template, the template could have a standard set of issues. Now, if you think in terms of an issue, you would never really want to copy someone else's problems. But if you reuse issues to something like checklists or risk assessments, those could be standard items that you would want to copy over and over and over again and populate those in every single project. And you'll see a couple of examples there. So the issue feature allows you to sort of have a copy function if you wanted to introduce something that sort of was already existing and people had to sort of work off of the list. And the other feature I briefly mentioned, but another reason that the issue feature is interesting is that it has a number of notifications associated to it. So you can sort of introduce almost like a workflow. There's no approve and reject type workflow, but there's notification workflow. So just the standard set of notifications that come available are, sending a notification to someone when you've created a new issue. Okay, so the project owner or even the customer owner or account owner could get the email when a new issue is created within a project. Notifying someone that they've been assigned to an issue in OpenAir. And then if the issue's been closed or resolved, then notifying the project owner or the user or the customer or all of them, or customer owner, sorry, or all of them. You don't have the ability to sort of notify the customer or anything, but you do have controls over the standard values associated to the project owner, customer owner, and person who's working on the issue. Okay. So taking all that into consideration, so based on the status of the issue, I've got like newly created or assigned or resolved, I can send notifications out to people. I can rename things so I can have it be formatted and tracking items that are important to me. I can have some kind of workflow where our status is where I know something is open or resolved, some kind of state. I have due date information. I have task association options. I have user assignment options. So now the option, now the feature's got a little bit of everything. So what could I possibly do with it? What would be useful things for me to do with it? And the notifications feature within the issues module, or the issues feature, actually has a couple different controls on top of that. So you can do some conditional notifications. So those of you who may remember, a couple years ago, OpenAir came out with, they've always had things called like email templates. Those have been around for a number of years. So email templates give you the ability to sort of customize the content of the email depending on what kind of email you're sending out. So there are email templates in OpenAir for issues, such as you assign the issue to someone else, it's a brand new issue, or the issue's been completed, and you can populate it and cut and paste, custom fields and values in the message and kind of use it for clear communication. But there's also a notification feature, and the notification feature gives people the ability to sort of add a little bit of conditional notification. So you don't always send out an assigned issue email. Maybe you only send it out if the issue is a severity of high or red or critical type thing. Or maybe you only send it out if it's gone into the assigned stage. These are all things that sort of you sort of figure out how you want to build the house so that you can figure out where you want to put the art on the walls type thing. So the conditional notification controls are related to the values that you have in the issue stage, the values that you have in the issue severity, the person you assign to it. Think in terms of, would there be a need for you to notify someone in finance that something is happening? Maybe you conditionally set up a notification so that when a certain type of issue is created and assigned to the finance person, an email goes just to that person and no one else. Okay? Or specifically for a specific project. Okay? So those conditional notifications give you the ability to have yet another set of custom email communications coming from OpenAir regarding whether the issue was created, whether it was modified or deleted. And I'm going to keep using the word issue because we're talking about the issue feature, but of course, as you've already seen in my sandbox, I have already renamed it, so I don't even call it issue. I call it activity assignment in the sample that I did here. So you have the controls for the email, you have the controls for the content of the email, you have the controls for when the email may go out, you have the controls of when you copy things into like this part of project setup, you have controls over the name of things, controls over the list of fields, the values in the fields, and of course adding all kinds of custom fields just like you can on anything like the project form and the user form and so forth. Okay. So it's great. You can get all this data in the system and you can send emails out, but what if people want to look something up? How do you do that? Well, there's also a detail report for issues, and it's a detail report that pulls everything off of the issue table, including the custom fields that you may add onto it. So you can always write reports, maybe put a report on your project dashboard or on other dashboards, your home dashboard, to report on what are the critical issues across the projects, what are the critical issues that have to get done in the next week, that kind of thing. So you can use the date ranges on the issue form. You can use the fields that you put on there, either the standard drop-down fields like category, severity, source, or custom fields that you may add on there to write these reports that are going to be usable so that you're interacting with the data. And of course, one of the nicer features is that the Issues tab itself shows up in the project module at the tab level. So Projects is a tab, Tasks is a tab, Issues is a tab, which means you can click into it, find everything that's open, then use column filters to say, give me everything that's assigned to Jody, give me everything that's critical or red, give me everything that's still open. And just using those simple column filters to quickly find the data within the system. Okay. So all of that, and then of course I've talked about the custom fields. Any number of custom fields can be added to the issue form. And then the form, there is a form permission control of the issue form, similar to your other forms like project properties and user demographic. And it has the same type of controls where you can disable the delete and save button and hide and require and read-only fields. You can add permission rules on the form so that, based on the values of certain fields, you populate the form in different ways, for example, or you require fields based on certain other values, limit lists, all those controls that are available on other form permissions are available in the Issues feature. So I can add fields, I can rename fields, there's email workflow associated with it, there's copy functions, I can customize the emails, I can conditionally send the emails, and I can review the data across project modules. So now it seems like there's a lot of potential here to use this feature. Okay? It's just a matter of what you want to do. That's probably the harder part, is now how can I take advantage of this? And so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just give you some ideas. And these are ideas that we've worked with customers on, or customers have done themselves and let us know about, that we wanted to share to give you the idea of how to leverage the fact that all of this stuff is there. And it starts with one checkbox of enabling the feature in the system, and it's all in your control. There's only one internal switch related to this that you may be interested in if necessary. Okay? So here we go. Here's some examples. So a project management checklist. So we're going to go through these 7 examples. I've got screenshots of how these had been configured in various systems, both with the old UI and in the new UI. And in our sandbox, I've actually configured a couple of examples that we can walk through real time if there's some questions. So let's talk about the first one, project management checklist. So the concept here was every project manager, when they kick off a project, they have to follow a checklist. And instead of referring to a Word document all the time, could we just put it inside OpenAir? That was the driver, that was the request, that was the requirement. So we came up with using the issue list. And because we can copy that list over and over again, it's set up as part of the project template that's used to create new projects. And the list is copied into each new project. The prefix was changed to PM to make it very clear that this is a PM checklist. And so then the checklist was just identified with the various steps that PMs have to complete in order to be compliant with their methodology. Notifying people involved in the project, making sure the project plan is set up, setting up a kickoff meeting. Everything from opening to closing the project is here. All the checklist items default into an open stage, and when they're completed by the PM goes and edits the checklist item and changes it to completed, and that's it. They're not taking advantage of any notifications. It's really just a checklist. And so it's a standard checklist to make sure everyone is compliant with the PMO methodologies. And because of that, the PMO can go into the PM checklist tab and look at projects that are currently active and where the PMs are in completing their checklist, and either making sure they're keeping the data up to date, or if they're behind, following up as to is the project going to be in trouble because they're not completing the standard methodology. Okay? The form is very simple. A lot of the fields, the standard fields, are all hidden. The assignment is the only thing that you may still remove if you want, because the PM would probably be the owner of all of these anyway. But it's just, what is it that you need to do, and did you do it? And you could put the date in there of when you did it, close it out, and be done with it. Okay, very simple concept, but useful to sort of promote that methodology. Risk management. I've helped customers put this one in place because there's usually sort of a standard risk assessment or risk list that PMs have to track. And I like thinking in terms of using the risk management functionality with the issue feature, because although it has to get updated on a regular basis, it's not as dynamic as perhaps like a development bug where you're going back and forth with developers and troubleshooting and wanting to capture all kinds of interactive information from multiple people. So risk tracking is something that you just, like many PMs will do, they'll have a risk log. What is the risk? What is the priority? What is the impact to schedule? What's the impact to budget? What's the mitigation plan? And then things like where are we at as far as sort of mitigating this risk, closing this risk, and if we close it, what did we do to close it? So here on this form, a number of custom fields were added, things like a text area called mitigation plan, a checkbox saying that there was a risk to the budget, and I just simply added notes to that checkbox, so that's all one custom field there, with little hint to say enter the amount of money that's the impact to the budget. If there's an impact to the schedule, same kind of concept. Maybe adding some notes to say what's the schedule, is it everything that's delayed, or is it just it's going to be an adjustment to a parallel option to get back on track. And then a few of the standard feature fields are still used, things like priority and category. I left those on there because they made sense for the risk, to categorize what kind of risk is it. Is this a project management risk? Is this a data migration risk? Is this a training risk? Is this a documentation risk? So that you could pull reports or segment the information to understand where the risk is actually happening. Now, the interesting thing about the risk form is the risk, you may want to have more of a, if the risk was created, was it reviewed with the team or with the PMO, and has it been resolved? So you may have a different sort of issue stage structure there, to not just open and close, but open, reviewed, and resolved, for example. And notifications here could be something that could be optional, where you would, if there was a risk that had to have a mitigation plan with somebody had to do something related to it, maybe you assign somebody to that and you use the notifications to let them know that they've been assigned to this risk to mitigate it. Okay? So, so taking advantage a little bit more of the features, combining custom fields with standard fields, and sort of using it more from a tracking perspective as one of your project management tools. Status reports. Now, the status report option that I've helped customers create, or that we've worked with customers creating, is not as pretty as a Word document with color coding and nice formatted tables and stuff, but at the end of the day it does get the job done, so it's something that you could probably consider, maybe trip reports or something like that from the team that the PM could see. Again, custom fields, what was accomplished, what is the 2-week outlook, are we on track with the schedule, are we on track with the budget? And using things like the date field, so if I created this on the 7th of July, this would be the weekly status for the week of July 7th. Okay, so you could create one of these every week. Definitely sort of look at the progress of the status as you continue to add status reports into the project under the status report link, which is really just the rename of the issue feature. Okay. You hide a lot of the standard fields, so I don't need things like the date that it was resolved, or the date, the resolution notes, or I don't need a lot of sort of closure type fields, because this is a status report. I'm just putting in a piece of information. So even like the progress field could probably be hidden because it's it's sort of a you create it and leave it type thing. There's really not an open closed concept behind it. And then if you wanted, you could always notify people when they've been created to say there's a new status. So the project owner could get notification. Maybe the account manager, who's named as the customer owner, could get the status. And then, of course, you'd be able to run reports so that you'd be able to look at how the status has changed over the weeks during the project as it was run. Okay. So basic status reporting, not as robust probably as what you would probably give to a customer deliverable, but a nice quick snapshot of what's going on in the project. Or you can get really tricky and sort of combine the two, combine risk and status, where you basically introduce yet one more custom field. I put control field as the name here. And really, basically, you create this form, you create this item, and you tell it what it's supposed to be. The one that I'm creating right now is going to be status. Oh wait, no, it's going to be risk. And based on that value, you can create form permission rules on your form permissions to say, if it's a risk, show these fields. If it's a status report, show these fields. Okay? So you can actually use the issue form for more than one thing, and use a control field to sort of tell it what it's supposed to be when it grows up, type thing. So that gets a little more tricky from a reporting perspective, because you have to make sure you're pulling the right fields that belong with the right control value. But risk and status are things that naturally live together, and maybe that's an option that you would be interested in looking at. And you could use the progress or the stage as this is my status stage, this is my issue stage, or my risk stage, and use it that way. So you can actually combine types of issue usage by using some kind of control field control to set it up. And I have an example in there I can kind of show you in our system. If I can bring that up here. Okay. Well, I'll see if my machine comes up near the end, and we'll give it a go, and I'll show you the permission rules I have in place. It's really just, if the control field says status, show these fields, or hide these other fields. Work requests. So some of you may recognize this is the old UI, something that we did for a customer, where we actually used the issue form to basically indicate what work people had to do and what deliverables were required, and tracking this was sort of assigning work to some other department type thing, right? So here the field was the feature we're using the assign to be able to notify people that they were assigned to it, a task to basically give people direction on use this task to record your time against it when you're completing this piece of work. Using the request stage to keep track of whether things were assigned to people or if they were completed and done. So the notifications to the project manager that when the work request was done, they knew that it was completed. A lot of custom fields here, like who else should it be assigned to this? And this is the one I mentioned. There was one internal switch that you would need to know if you wanted to use it. And that's at the very bottom of this form. You can actually turn a switch on that says you can add more people to the notification as a CC when it gets created. So not only the person that's named as the assigned person at the top, but you could also add additional people, whoever you select in the middle there, as assigned to, and put that in the CC thing at the very bottom down there to sort of make sure the email goes to all the right people. But here there was a little different twist on the work request. There was an estimate of hours in here. So people were being told, hey, can you do this piece of work, record your time on this task. We're expecting this to take 8 hours to complete. So a little bit, almost like a subtask type activity. Okay. And then there was a sort of a revision tracking thing. There was departments that were involved in keeping track of what department owned this, so they could run reports and pull information just for their group. And then there was a revision tracking. So if it was sort of they had put a request in for work, but then they had to make adjustments to that. So they would come in and they would check a revision 1, and they would add like what the change was, what the new set of hours are, what's the new date that it's due, just to keep track of that things change, and so you'd be able to keep track of the. Oh, I'm getting a connection error here, so that may mean that I am not sharing my screen anymore. Hang on one second, guys. So on the phone, Hi, again, I apologize about this technical glitch that's going on here. The last couple examples that I wanted to show you were basically something called an activity assignment, which was what I had customized in our sandbox environment to basically give people tasks to work on and make it a more granular level of what people could track versus just being assigned to a task. So they're assigned to the documentation task or the training task, but what is it they're supposed to do? Then you can create activity assignments and basically say, okay, so I need you to write the timesheet training guide. I need you to prep the slides for the expense report course. And that way you don't have to put that level of detail in your project plan, and people won't have to put that level of detail on their timesheets, but they still know what they're specifically supposed to be working on related to that task. So you can use activity assignments, and it's very much just using the task assignment, using the user's name, and giving them, using that synopsis field to say, here's what you should be doing. And then you can also use the date fields, because the date fields then could drive sort of the priority of when the person has to finish the work. Okay. And then the last item, or there's a couple other items that we had kind of worked with customers on. One was something called a contract tracker. So they basically turn the issue form into a way to track individual contract items related to the project. And so we added a lot of custom fields to track sort of standard bill rate, what are the terms of the contract, what kind of contract is it change order, is it a MSA, is it a PO, that kind of thing. When does it expire? So that you could run reports to say, give me everything that's expired. And then you would have the different stages, and the stage would be we're drafting this, the contract's been reviewed, maybe the contract is signed, and then the contract has expired, so you can keep track of it in those stages. And then by the fact that you have the contracts within the projects, you could then look at the contracts across projects to find out which ones are expired or which ones are getting ready to expire, so you can go and talk to the customer about new ones. And the last one, which is one that TopStep started using, is just for us to keep working on behalf of you guys or with you guys. We submit tickets to OpenAir a lot, and we put enhancements in there. We like to try and keep track of the enhancements that we ask for, and in working with our friends over at NetSuite to find out if anything's going to be able to make it in a release or something. And so we actually customized the issue form to be sort of a third-party ticket tracker. And we used a lot of the standard fields, a lot of the standard issue fields, but we added sort of a cross-reference number, and so we would put the case number or the enhancement number or the defect number, as the case may be, in our little tracker so that we could keep track of it for each of the customers that we were working with. So that was our particular use. Probably not too many people out there that would probably use it for that, but it was very helpful for us, and then we could run reports to see how many of the same common issue was coming up across projects. So those are just some of the examples that we were able to come up with customers, implement for customers. In all cases, there isn't sort of a mass run-in-action type functionality yet in this particular area of the system. So from that perspective, it's still more manual, more sort of edit the form and close things out or update the forms. So the more static the information, the easier it is to consider using this feature, because that way you have a basis of understanding of how often you're going to have to be touching that part of the system. So I am still trying to unlock the phones, and it looks like I'm not on the internet at all anymore either. So it is turning out to be sort of a bust. I do apologize about this. We may have to re-record this and make sure that everyone gets definitely hears it fully. So since my machine's not working, and I don't know if anyone's still on the phone, here's what I'm going to suggest is, again, I do apologize about sort of probably I don't know where the connection dropped in the list of things, but we will record this webinar again, and the slides will be available if you would like to see the examples that we pulled together for the different types of issue usage. And we will send a notification for anyone who joined us today when the recording is available, so that you can listen back and pick up the pieces that, from the point that we lost connection with the technology, and see if you have any questions for that. So I do appreciate you staying with me as long as you did, and thanks for still supporting us. We'll make sure that this, figure out what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again. And feel free to send us any questions that you have or comments to info@topstepconsulting.com, or you can always find us on the OpenAir users group in LinkedIn. So with that, I will sign off and look forward to having a more successful webinar next month. Okay? Take care, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.